Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk in the southeast region of Scotland, here in the United Kingdom. And of course, as everybody should know by now, Scotland is the capital of the entire universe. So, for those of you that don't live in Scotland, you should come and at least come here for a holiday, and then stay, pretty much. Anyway, I hope everybody has had a great week so far. It's been a good one for me too. It's been nice and quiet now that everybody is back to school and work, so that's been quite nice. And it's been quite nice that everybody is fit and healthy again, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I have just literally finished my dinner. I know, late dinner, but I finished my dinner maybe about half an hour ago. So here we are. It's midnight here in the UK. So 6 p.m. in the central area of the United States. And of course, 1 a.m. in Europe. And it's probably lunchtime or something like that down in Australia. I know I do have some folks down in New Zealand and Australia who are very likely watching. Thank you very much for watching. If you are, welcome. Glad to have you here. We don't have that many here just now. Hopefully we will grow a wee bit and we'll have a few more here. We certainly had a lot of people here last week. My gosh, we had a lot of people here last week. We had quite a few here people on Sunday as well for Sunday Night Live, which was fantastic. Always good to get almost 30 people, which is nice. I mean, I would like to get my audience for both my shows up to about 50 each. That would be good. That would be nice. That would be a nice number to reach. So yeah, so if you know people for whom you think either Songwriting Simplified or Sunday Night Live would be of value and good for them and entertaining for them and edutating, yeah, I think that's a word. You know, educating, entertaining, something like that. I mean, you know, this show and this channel are not just contemporary and relevant. We are, in fact, contemporant. So why not edutate as well? Anyway, so let's get things started. So tonight we are going to talk about pivot chords and how useful those can be in moving your music forward and giving it a sense of forward motion, and also giving you open access to every other key that there is. So all 12 major keys, all 12 minor keys. Pivot chords are really useful because you can slip nice and easily from one key into another without really your listener being aware of it. I mean, obviously you can make it blatantly obvious what you're doing, like Handel used to do. He used to use a very dramatic pivot chord to take you into a new key, but you don't have to do that. You can do it very subtly, and I'm going to show you how you can do that. I'm going to show you both ways, actually, how you can kind of just abruptly change key, but also how you can quite subtly kind of shift and slip slide like a chameleon from one key to another, and your audience never notices. So that's kind of what I want to give you as a useful songwriting tool tonight. Now, a lot of the tools that we've done, that we've covered this year so far, I know it's crazy, we're in February already, have been kind of harmonic tools. And the reason being is that there are just so many harmonic tools. There are a bajillion harmonic tools that are really, really useful. We are going to get onto some melodic tools as well, and how you can use different things, different melody writing tools to take your melody writing up a gear and make actually melody writing easier. Because I know for some of you guys, melody writing is a little bit of a challenge, and your melodies tend to do kind of this. They kind of wander a wee bit, and they kind of lack a little bit of direction. And so unfortunately, a melody that just kind of meanders and wanders a little bit is going to get lost on your listener. And so you want to keep your listener engaged. And so to do that, you need concise melody. Concise melody. It is not easy to do, but it is also not hard to do. Okay, there are devices that you can use and tools that you can use to make this kind of challenging thing of melody writing a lot easier. So we're going to start picking up the baton with those very, very soon. But right now I want to get into pivot chords, and kind of partly because we talked about 251s and things like that last week. I did get a couple of emails basically wanting to kind of clarify that. So we're going to kind of do that as well as the pivot chords, but we can actually put the two things together, okay? Because they are part and parcel of the same thing fundamentally. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to take your questions as well. But first, before we get to that, Chris Mrackner was first in the door, which is fantastic for him. And he says, "Greetings, Earth people, take me to your leader." That's very funny. And as King of Scotland, I suppose I am the leader. And we got John Hawk here, we got Boris Dancy, and we got Billy Morgan here as well. And we got Tony Stringer who says, "Yippee, I'm awake." Awesome. Thank you, Tony. I'm glad you're here, buddy. And we've got Elusive 1970. That's my friend Mark. How are you, mate? Glad you're here because you emailed me one of those questions. So thank you for doing that. Chris says, "I got me a new desk chair. My butt is happy." Well, I'm very glad to hear that. A comfortable arse is an important thing for music making. So definitely important. And we've got Bobby Beards here as well. And John Hawk is saying Scotland is the capital of the universe. Yes, it is. Educational says Chris Mrackner. Yeah, there we go. And we got Aurora's Boring Alice, who says, "Hello from a pedestrian bystander." Hello to you too, and thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I hope you find this show useful. And we've got Sean Carr here as well, which is fantastic. We've got Stephen Wilson here, and we got Secret Squirrel here as well, which is equally fantastic. So we're a wee bit down on numbers, but that's okay. I'm sure we will have a few more people coming in as we progress. So let's get into the meat and bones of this thing. Pivot chords. What is a pivot chord? Well, it's like anything that is a pivot. It helps something move. It helps your music move. So like you have a hinge has a pivot in it so that it can move. And your wrist is a pivot. It's this thing here. So this is a pivot. So there are pivot chords. Pivot chords help keep your music moving forward. And you get these a lot in a lot of different places, but the one we're going to focus on is the one that makes everything go, as far as I'm concerned. All right, so let's take a look at a few pivot chord options. So if we are in the key of C, the most obvious pivot is chord 5 to chord 1. That is the most obvious pivot chord that there is. So we're going to kind of use this 5 to 1 idea and make this really useful, because we can put little 5-1s inside a set of chord changes. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to go chord 1, chord 6, chord 2, chord 5 to 1. So we'll do C, A minor, that's chord 6, D minor, it's chord 2, G, standard pop song chord changes. I'm playing at this slow tempo so you can see exactly how this thing works. So what we're going to do is we're going to sneak a chord 5 in front of each one of those chord changes, with the obvious exception of being the one that's at the end, because that is already a 5 to 1. So how do we do this? So first of all, we've got the 1. The next chord is chord 6, which is the A minor. So what is 5 of A minor? Well, here's how we work it out. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So chord 5 is E. And we need this leading tone, so it's going to be a dominant chord. So how are we going to sneak this in? There's a couple of ways we can do it. We can do it like this. Okay, so let's say we're going to do 2 beats on each chord. Whoops. Yay. Okay, so I'm basically pounding out the roots in my left hand, which is fine, and that works. But what if we use the 3rd of the chord in the left hand, which is the leading tone into the root of the next chord? So in this case, the 3rd is the G sharp, which leads really nicely into that A minor, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go chord 1, and now we're in A minor, okay? So what happens next in our little set of chord changes? We've gone chord 1, chord 6, so the next one is chord 2. Okay, so what is the 5 of D minor? We count up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That happens to be A. Now, because we've gone to chord 6, which is minor, we need a dominant chord, an A7, to go to the chord 2. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to do something. So instead of going like this, which does sound fine, it sounds okay going from A minor to A7, that works. But what we're going to do is we're going to do something a little bit extra sneaky. And we're going to do a tritonal substitution for this A7. How does tritonal substitution work? Okay, we need the root to be a tritone away from that A7 chord. Okay, so what is a tritone? It's 3 whole tones. So we go A to B is 1, B to C sharp is 2, C sharp to D sharp is 3. Okay? So we want a dominant chord built on this note here as the root. So the good news is here that A7 and E flat 7 have 2 really useful notes in common. The G and the C sharp or D flat, which is a nice little tritone here, okay? So what we will do is we will go chord 1 and then E7 over with the G sharp in the bass to A minor. And then we'll do E flat 7 and that'll take us down to D minor. And there's our 5 and 1. Let's go around that again. Now you can, if you prefer, to use the A7 instead. Depends on the style of music you're using and also the direction of travel of your melody. So 5 1s can be slipped in the middle of a set of chord changes just to make it sound a little bit more interesting. So what have we gone from? Let's recap a wee bit. So we've gone from which is okay, but a little bit boring. So what we've done is we've done this. we can make that still even a little bit more interesting and a little bit more fulsome. And it's already sounding pretty good. So we can do this. We can go C, E with the G sharp, A minor, and then we can go now what did I just do? I did a minor 2-5-1, but I did that tritonal substitution. So I did the E minor 7 flat 5 to E flat 7 D minor. Now, if you don't want to do the tritonal substitution, that's absolutely fine. Don't do it. Just use the A7. But what you'll find is you get this nice little piece of movement here. And that works really, really beautifully, even if you lose that tritonal substitution. So C, E over G sharp, A minor, E minor 7 flat 5, A7 flat 9, D minor, G, and C. So little passing 5-1s like that can really add some forward motion to your harmony, to your chord changes, to especially if you're wanting to drive forward, let's say from a verse into a chorus. You can do a series of little 5-1, 5-1, 5-1s. So, you know, you can... And you can do all of those, and those are basically just little 5-1s with a couple of tritonal substitutions thrown in there. But what those do is they just give you a sense of forward motion, and also they're useful as a little turnaround to loop you back into, let's say, the start of the next verse or the start of the next chorus. These are little things that I do all the time. So if I've done this... I will often do this. I'll do that as a little turnaround to get me back into C major. That's basically E flat major, A flat major, D flat 7, and then I'm back into here. So, pivot chords, 5-1s. Another way in which these are useful is if you literally want to go from one key to another. So that's how you can kind of spice up a set of chord changes. But let's say we want to go from one key literally to another. So if I want to go from the key of G, let's say, and I want to go to B flat, well, I can just do a direct 5 to 1 in the new key, which is what you do. You always do 5 going to 1 of the new key. So in this case, I'm going to go to B flat from G. Okay. To do that, I need to do an F7. To get back, I'm going to do a G7. So now I'm in C again, but I want to get back to G. D7 over F sharp, and now I'm in G again. And now I'm back in G again. And I went actually all the way over there to D flat major and then came back. Just by doing the same thing. 2-5-1. And I just basically went through a whole cycle of fifths there, all the way round until I got back to C using 2-5-1s. So that's how powerful this little idea of pivot chords really, really is. Just to be able to go from one key to another. Now, how did Handel do it? Because I mentioned Handel at the start. So how did Handel do it? So let's say Handel is in the key of C. And he wants to go to the key of A major, which he wouldn't do because it's not a relative key. He would want to go to G major. So he would want to go to G, so he would do this. You basically just do a 5, which is basically D7, and then you're in G major. But you can prep for that 5 by doing what we would call a secondary dominant. So in this case, I could do from C. I could do a little climbing thing. I could go C, A7 over C sharp, D. And that would take me to G. So, And now I'm in G. So, just like that. Just, going C over A over C sharp, D. And now I'm in G. Okay, and then of course when you're in the dominant, which is G, you want to go back to the tonic, which is C. So again, because G is the dominant, you could just turn that into a 7th chord. But what if we do a pivot before that? So in much the same way that we did the pivot earlier. So we went. Okay, so we went C, A, it's basically 2-5-1. Now the fun part about this is chord 2 is minor, and but it's, D is also 5 of G. As we just found out, because that's how we got to the key of G in the first place. So we want to do another little pivot, but this time it's going to be a little bit different. So we would go, because we're in G, we want to do a 2-5-1, but we want to do that little pivot thing. So we would do D minor, and G would be in the bass, into C. And that was a little series of 5-1s using that pivot, with the 3rd in the bass. To take me to E minor, and then A7, D minor, G, and C. Okay, so that's how those little pivot chords with the 3rd in the bass is really, really useful. All right, so we don't have a lot of people in here. We've got about 17 people in here. Let's go up and see, do we have any questions about that in particular? I'm going to go and take a look. Right, it says, I keep my pivots private based on quarterly per profit. That's hilarious. Turashiva's here. Hello, Turashiva. Welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you for coming. Let's see. Billy Morgan is saying hello to them as well. Top hat and a cane, the old soft shoe. Yeah, something like that. All right. Do we have any questions about those pivot chords? Because I'm happy to now take questions on any other songwriting, composing, arranging, and music theory kind of question. I mean, I know that was kind of a little bit music theory heavy, but if you've got any other questions, I'm happy to take those. Mark, I hope that kind of whole idea of pivot chord helps you with when you were talking about 2-5-1s, and that the question you had was, if I'm doing a 2-5-1 to get into a new key, does it have to be the 2-5-1 of the new key? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So if you are in the key of C and you want to go to the key of E flat, then you need to do F minor, B flat, E flat. So if we're in C, there's my pivot chord going into C. And I want to go to E flat. And now I'm in E flat. But there's that little pivot chord that I just did. G, which is the 5, with the third in the bass, going to 1. You can do that again, but just going straight into E flat. You don't have to do the chord 2 if you don't want to. So see how that works? And I've just done the same thing to get to A flat. And D flat. Now we're in G. Now we're in F. D minor. Just to prove you can do it in D minor as well. And we're back in C. So that's basically using chord 5 with the third in the bass, which is the leading tone into your new key. And by leading tone, I mean it's basically the next door note. So if we got the third of the there's B flat, there's the third, except I'm putting the third in the bass. And that leads nicely into E flat. And then if I do C over E, that leads into F. D over F sharp leads into G. E over G sharp leads into A minor or A major, whichever you prefer. And then I'm doing a little half diminished here, but I could do F sharp over G, A sharp into B minor. And now I'm back in the key of C major. Okay? So, Mark, I hope that really helps. Let's see. Explain 2-5-1. Okay. Chris wants to know exactly what a 2-5-1 is. Okay. So let's take 1 being in the key of C major. 1 is C. So you count up the numbers of the letters, of the keys, right? So if C is 1, you count up 5 notes and you get the 5, which is G. Okay? So we go 2, which is 2 is next door to 1. 2, 5, 1. So D minor, G7, C. Okay, so that's what a 2-5-1 is. Now, if I stay here, I'm not going to change key. I'm just doing 2, 5, 1 and C over and over again. It doesn't go anywhere. So if I want to go to the key of A major from C, I need to do 2, 5, 1 in A. So if 1 is A, then 2 is going to be B, and then we count. And the 5 is going to be E. Okay? So we want to do B minor, E7, A minor, or A major, whichever you want to do. So if we're going to A major, that's what we do. Okay? Same with F. Okay? F, if 1 equals F, then 2 is going to be G. Count up 5 and you get to C. So 5 in the key of F is C. So 1, so 2, 5, 1. So G minor, C7, F. Okay, it's the same formula from any key to any other key. It's only a little bit different going from major to minor, or from, you know, if you're in a minor key, it's a little bit different because 2 is not minor, it's half diminished. So it's like a minor chord, but you've flattened the 5. Okay, for chord 2, and then chord 5 is just a 7 chord. Okay, so if we were doing A minor from C major, I would do the half diminished, which is B minor with there's the minor, there's B minor. Let's flat that 5 so we get the F natural. And now I'm in A minor. And then if I want to get back, I do D minor, G7, C. So that's what 2-5-1 is. It's the key that unlocks every other key. It's the formula, rather, that unlocks it going from any key to any other key on either the cycle of fifths for major keys or the cycle of fifths for minor keys. You can hop between. So you can go from major to minor, or you can go from major to any other major key, or minor from any other minor key to any other minor key, or from a minor key to a major key. It's the same kind of formula. But if you're going to a minor key, there's that minor 7 flat 5 for chord 2 rather than just a normal minor 7 chord. Okay, so that's the only variance. Is 2-5-1 in a minor key is a little bit more complicated than 2-5-1 in a major key, but that is kind of it, really. Mark Elusive 1970 says, nice, I think I got it now. I just need to go work this week. Okay, cool. I'm glad. So he says, what do you do if you take larger steps, going from C major to D major? Exactly the same thing. C major. We can do that pivot chord thing if you like, which is A with the third in the bass, which is the C sharp. And now you're in D. Or you can do the 2-5-1, which is E minor, A7, D. Okay, so let's go back to chord C, to the key of C. Now we're in the key of C. And we want to get to the key of D major. Now we're in the key of D major. E minor, A7, D. And then to get back, D minor, G7, C. Okay? So it really is the formula to go from any key to from one key to any other key. We can do really distant keys if you want. Like we can go from the key of C to the key of F sharp if you want. So key of C major. F sharp. And I'm going to use just a pivot chord to get back. Which is that G over B. There, I did my pivot chord again. So I did just the D flat, or if we go into the key of G flat, a D flat with the F in the bass, and now I'm in G flat, okay? And of course, it's enharmonically different. If you're going to F sharp, that would be C sharp, with the E sharp in the bass, going to F sharp major, okay? So that's basically it. That's how 251s work. And they literally unlock going anywhere you want to go. And also they can spice up pretty boring, plain Jane, ordinary chord changes that are very familiar and are used by everybody. So if you want to use a very simple set of chord changes, but make them a little bit more interesting to play, a little bit more interesting to listen to, or to open up, you know, some extra chord tones for which you can use for building a melody, or extra chord tones for building improvisation, then certainly sticking in a little 5 before the next chord is going to help. But it's got to be the 5 of the chord you're going to in order to make it work. Okay? So, you know, when you're in C and you go into A minor, you got to do the E7, okay? Which is what I did there. So C, E, A minor, A7, D, G, C. And it's sticking in that E before the A minor that makes it interesting. And then the A7 to D to G to C that makes it a little bit more interesting. And you can spice that up with some tritonal substitutions if you want as well. Depends on the style of music you're working in. Although, that said, tritonal substitutions crop up all over the place. You find them in pop music. It's a jazz concept, but you find them in pop music as well. There's a number of Billie Eilish songs that have tritonal substitutions in them, and also some Taylor Swift songs have got them in them as well. So it's worth kind of taking note of, and not just kind of going, oh, it's jazz, I don't do jazz, and it's not going to be relevant to me. I would also explain about 254 or whatever. Once you know the key, 2 minor in most players, they know their drill. Okay, I'm not quite sure what you mean there, but 254 would be 2, 5, 4. That doesn't really go anywhere. G minor, G, F. That doesn't really go anywhere. So, whilst we're on this subject of passing chords and pivot chords and stuff like that, there's one other really useful thing, and it's called a backdoor 2-5. But here's the thing, it doesn't use a 2 or a 5. We just call it a backdoor 2-5. I don't know why we call it a backdoor 2-5, because it doesn't actually use 2-5. They are substitutes for 2-5, and this is where it kind of gets, this is kind of a little bit more of a slightly more advanced technique, but when you actually play it, you go, oh, that's actually really easy, and I've actually done it loads before. You just didn't realize what it was. So how does this backdoor thing work? Basically, we've talked about 2-5-1 and you know how those relate to each other. So chord 2 is D minor, chord 5 is G, chord 1 is C in the key of C major. And we went through a few different key centers to prove that that's how that works. So the relationship between chords is based on a number system. Okay, so when I say chord 6, I'm talking about A minor. How do I know that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Count up 6 from C. Okay, and that's A minor, okay, in the key of C. So let's take the chord of flat 6. So it's not A minor, we flatten the A minor to A flat, but we make that major. Okay? So flat 6, major, flat 7. Whoa, what's flat 7? Hang on. What is 7? Count it up. C2, so C is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 is the B in C major, okay? But we flatten that, so we play the black note to the left. That's flattening it. That makes it B flat. So now we know that flat 7 is B flat, and that's going to be a major chord in this case. So we've got flat 6, flat 7, and then 1. That's a backdoor. It's a backdoor 2-5-1. And you'll hear this at the endings of all sorts of songs. Let me think of a couple of famous TV theme tunes where you might have heard this. The ending of the theme tune to Murder, She Wrote. That's a backdoor 2-5-1. It's flat 6, flat 7. You'll also hear it at the end of the Star Trek Voyager theme. When they play the outro theme, not the intro theme, the outro theme, which is a little bit extended. And it goes... I'm not going to play the melody part because I will get a copyright strike. I know I will because I've had them before for even suggesting the Star Trek Voyager theme. I have had a copyright strike, so I'm not going to do it. But that's what happens at the end. It's flat 6, flat 7, 1. And it's a really popular way to end a song. Instead of just going, which is fine. You can do that. You can go 2, 5, 1. Great, we've finished. You know that chord 5 to chord 1 is the strongest possible ending that there is. You can't get a stronger ending than 5 to 1. But that not only provides a little bit of extra color and maybe a little bit of a surprise, especially if you've not used it before, especially if your song is just basically going... You've totally taken your audience by surprise because you've not played an A flat 7 chord in your entire or A flat triad in your entire song, and then suddenly you're playing those 2 chords which don't belong to your key, but they work. So that is what we call a backdoor, and you can use a backdoor to get into another key as well. But that's a little bit more of an advanced technique, which probably is outside of the scope of this show, considering this show is called Songwriting Simplified. So that's how kind of the numbering system works. So there's 2 ways to think about this numbering system. One is kind of the Roman numeral numbering system, which, by the way, is almost exactly identical to the Nashville numbering system. So people that are Nashville session players will know exactly what I'm talking about, as well as, West Coast and East Coast jazz musicians will know what I'm talking about when I talk about 2-5-1s or 3-6-2-5-1 or I Got Rhythm chord changes. They know what that is. Nashville musicians maybe don't know what the I Got Rhythm thing is, but they certainly know what 3-6-2-5-1 is, and it's relationships to the key center. And that's the beauty of the Nashville numbering system, is it doesn't matter what key you're in. Everybody knows what 1 equals. If you know what 1 equals, you know what all the other notes are, right? So if you know that 1 equals E flat, great. 1 is E flat. That means 2 is F, 3 is G, 4 is A flat, 5 is B flat, 6 is C, 7 is D. And then you're back to 1 again. So that's the beauty of this numbering system I'm talking about. It makes it easier for you to relate one chord to another chord to another chord to another chord, regardless of the key you're in, which means if it's totally, you know, regardless of what key you're in, then it means you can use these to unlock going from one key to any other key, which is the beauty of the Nashville thing. And that's why it was developed, was because, you know, musicians would rehearse a song in one key, then the vocalist would come in and say, you know what, I've got a bit of flu today, can we, and so, you know, my register's a little bit limited today, but we've got to get this track cut. So what do? Let's take it down a key. Okay, so we are in the key of G major. Great. Let's take it down a tone. Let's take it down to F. Great. Everybody knows what 1 is. 1 is now F. So when we play 1, we're playing F. When we're playing 2, we're playing G minor. When we're playing 5, we're playing C7. And that's how the Nashville numbering system works. And it just means musicians can move very, very quickly between one key and another. And it makes transposing an absolute doddle. It really does. So that's what the 251 bit is all about there, Chris. So I hope that helps. It's the intervallic relationship between one and the next. Aurora's Boring Alice says, King of the World. Yeah, the Steely Dan song, King of the World, features that kind of backdoor progression quite a bit, actually. If you head west to LA, it gets worse for the numbers. Yeah, it really does. But yeah, that backdoor thing is it's in the end of each of the verses, and then you have that interlude where the chord changes appear to kind of go all over the place, but they don't. They don't. It's all kind of related. It's a sequence of backdoor 2/5s. But like I said, backdoor 2/5s being used as a pivot to go from one key to another is an advanced harmonic technique, which is decidedly outside of the scope of this this show. However, if you want to know how to use a backdoor progression to get from one key to another, and because you are a really sneaky person and you want to deceive your listener completely and utterly and make them feel like they have never left the key that they're in, if you want to know how to do that, let me know. Drop me an email below, and if I get enough interest in doing backdoor modulations, then I will do a standalone video. I won't make it part of the show. I will do a separate standalone video, which I will put in my Songwriting Tips playlist. Okay? There are a few things in the Songwriting Tips playlist which you can go and check out now, including The Power of the Key Change, parts 1 and part 2. Part 1 deals with how to go from one major key to another, and I've laid everything out very carefully and clearly and visually. And then part 2 is going from major to minor or minor to minor, using that minor, that the chord 2 being the minor 7 flat 5 chord. Okay? So, Chris, if you want to dive into 251s a little bit more, definitely go and check out those 2 videos, and there's a few more there as well. But if you want to know about the backdoor modulation, then please do let me know. And if you also want to know a little bit more about what we talked about last week, which was the mediant chord and using mediants to get from one chord to another, then absolutely I'll make another video on that as well and add that to that list. All right, so my question from above and from previous email may have been missed. Let's go and see where Secret Squirrel's question is. He says, I have a question regarding what do shapes of melodies and or songs look like as images? It's a good question. It's a difficult one to answer because they're going to look different people. However, I think what you're getting at is, can you sketch the rise and fall of a melody and see what shape that draws? Yes, you can. And the song I recommend you test this with, and you don't have to be very strict about it, you just have to go, okay, these notes are going up in pitch, these notes are going down in pitch, and you draw a line going up, you draw a line going down, is Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Sung by Judy Garland from The Wizard of Oz. I recommend you basically follow that, and you'll see that the beauty of that melody is that it has the same little ascending line with its answering descending line that then moves down and then it moves down again before it resolves back to the tonic. So we're going to get into melodies and the tessitura and arc of melodies in upcoming shows. Okay, so I haven't missed your question. I'm aware of your question. But I wanted to wrap up this whole thing of chords and make sure everybody, kind of was on the same page with it before we moved on to melody. So that's what I wanted to do tonight. But next week, we're going to start picking up melody, and we will devote the beginning of next week's show to that question of how you draw the arc of a melody. Now, the trouble is, I can't play the song, okay, because I will get a copyright strike, so that's not really a possible thing for me to do. But I can show you in a simple way how you can do it. And we'll have Notion open, and even if you can't read the notation, you can certainly see the rise and the fall of a melody line. Okay, and we'll make it nice and easy. All right, so that's what we will do next week. Now, tonight, after this show, I believe in an hour's time after this show, we have the Pennsylvania Studio One meetup. So if you are interested in going to that, then I most heartily recommend you make your way over there. One of my moderators will put the link in the chat so that everybody knows how to get to it. The Studio One meetups have been fantastic. We've been running them for 4 years now, and they are still amazingly well attended, which is why we're not stopping them. We're not stopping them anytime soon. There's no thoughts of stopping them. So they will continue. And if you are interested and you have Studio One questions that you would like answered, you can head over there. Also, if you have feature requests that you would like to see in future versions of Studio One or future builds of version 6 of Studio One, then that's the place to go. Get them in there. And we can talk about those kind of things, and we can talk about how you guys are using Studio One and what your favorite features are currently. So that is the place to go, and it is hosted by Ziggy. He is a cool dude, and he's also a fellow bass player. Okay, Secret Squirrel, I understand you. Cool. So we'll look at that definitely. We'll look at that definitely next week, okay? So I apologize. I just wanted to try and get this whole thing of chords all kind of wrapped up tonight. But we will start with melody and kind of like the shape and arc of melodies next week. And then we'll start getting into actual melody writing and phrasing and call, response, question, answer, rising sequence, falling sequence. There's a whole bunch of melody writing tools that you can use that are very, very repeatable and make melody writing very easy. And basically, melody writing, how do we get away from kind of just aimless? How do we get away from just wandering around aimlessly? You have to start constructing a melody like you are building a wall, okay? So that's what we're going to get into. So if you are interested in learning more about melody writing and you want to get better at it, come back here on Wednesday. And on Sunday this week, we will be back here, same time, 6 p.m. Central for, not Songwriting Simplified, but for Sunday Night Live, which is, again, yet another opportunity for you to ask your Studio One questions. So if you've got questions about usage of Studio One, or, we can talk basics, we can talk activations, how do you activate? We can go all the way through to kind of using more advanced techniques like event effects and side chaining and stuff like that. So if you are interested in that and you've got questions about that and you want to have, this show where we can unpack those kind of things, then be back here, 6 p.m. Central on Sunday for Sunday Night Live. And until then, folks, I will see you over at the Pennsylvania meetup in about an hour's time. It will be pretty cool. It's very late for me. It's going to be like 2 o'clock in the morning for me, but I'm going to kind of attend for a wee while. All right, folks. I will see you then. Good night, everybody.